Don't call it old school. Just say it's classic. Hey, John.
Hey, what's going on now?
There you go. Okay, and I can see you now. I'm sitting here just kind of with your song, classic JTS on loop. We'll get back to that. John?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Now you're on the screen. So I'm just really appreciative that you're able to join us. I would share for the audience that we met the summer of 1991. So that was 31 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Sometimes my math gets messed up because I want it to be 21 or maybe even 15, but,
but 2 years ago. 2 years ago.
2 years ago, right? We met 2 years ago, whatever. And I just remember, and some of this may be totally new to you. I just remember you coming up to the office at Mercury Records and just being so hungry, and your hustle was off the meter. And I was just like, why aren't these people paying attention to this kid? You know, this is what, and from my point of view, it was like, this is what you wanted in an artist. You didn't want the artist to sit back and just do nothing. You wanted the artist to be like, okay, what are we going to do next? What are we going to do next? What are we going to do next? Okay, I'm going to go here. I'm going to do that. What are you going to do? And being part of the process. And so, you know, not to make it about me, but I remember sitting there going, I want to help this kid because he's so passionate and so hungry, and he's out in the streets. And it just, from the beginning, I knew that I was going to learn something from you, and maybe you would learn something from me. And to see all the things you've done over the last 30 years is pretty amazing. And so I just want to congratulate you for, you know, using your gifts for good. And it's just so awesome to have you here. And the fact that we've been friends for all this time, right?
Right. I am extremely grateful and appreciative of those kind words. I definitely was hungry, and I think I still have that desire 30 years later. Hence why I'm here now. So yeah, man, Mercury, when they was doing what they was doing, and this is from my understanding, you know, they had just got into the rap game.
Right.
Mm-hmm. The last time they had a major artist of rap caliber was Curtis Blow, prior to Black Sheep, myself, and the rest of the crew. So I don't think they really, and to be, to speak to their point, for lack of a better word, I came in with a hip house song.
That's right. You sure did.
My song was signed as a hip house song. And because of my roots in hip hop, I begged Bruce Carbone and them to let me do a hip hop version of the song. Okay. But I got signed with them with the, you know, as on some KYs or two in the room, like that type of thing. So, you know, I guess it was a confusing to them to have this wannabe hip hop purist, and then, well, we can make you this guy over here. So I think that was the issue.
Wow. I think, well, let's turn it on its ear. You probably were just a little ahead of your time. Well, you know, because you were light skinned, the body was tight, you know, you had charisma, and, you know, I think that you could have been that boy from CNC Music Factory.
I could have been Freedom.
Freedom. There you go. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
you could have been Freedom.
And I think I think Bruce was trying to push me more in that direction, but I was not. That wasn't me.
No, it wasn't. And you know what? That we'll get into the reason why it wasn't later. That the song JTS really tells the story of why you weren't that.
Right. Exactly.
Right. So you listen to that song, you go, oh, of course not. You know, they didn't know where your heart was.
No. And again, I think I was very happy to get a deal. I was very, all right, well, let me just go with the flow. Let me not ruffle any feathers. Let me do this. You know, this is a major label. And a little unknown fact to you, the two place I ended up at Mercury, but the place that wanted to sign me first, and Eddie told me, not Eddie Arroyo, not Eddie, was Sleeping Bag. I was supposed to get signed to Sleeping Bag, but Bruce and them kind of sweetened the pot a little bit more, and Eddie Arroyo was like, no, let's go here. But I knew Sleeping Bag had EPMD, and I was like, this is where I needed to be.
Yes.
So that's what happened.
It would have been a completely different story. Because it would have been a completely different story. And the reason why I can say that is because, I was there. I heard the decisions. I knew it was going. I saw how they were making decisions about what they were going to pursue and what they weren't going to pursue. And not that I can speak to anything specific as when it came to your record, but I know you're right. There was original, and then there was a hip hop remix, and and it was a singles deal. And essentially, in a big machine like that, if it doesn't blow, the likelihood of you getting a second chance is pretty slim. And that's because if it was an album deal, then they had other things to pull from, and they can even test other singles, things of that nature. So it becomes a whole different dynamic, because when they sign a single, they're signing the one record. They're not necessarily signing the artist. But what they didn't know was that you were a franchise player. You were one of those people who had so many gifts that if they just hung around a little bit longer, they would have seen the acting, they would have seen the comedy, all of that, the songwriting.
They, for lack of a better word, I feel like they missed the boat. But hindsight is 2020. Everything happens for a reason.
Yes, absolutely. Everything happens for a reason.
I'm very fortunate to say, man, I got signed to this label, and they put out a record on me. They faith in me for that time being or whatever. But the greatest thing that I got out of that is I got a friendship with you for the last 30 years. So it's come full circle. So we started together on Mercury doing this one record. And now 30 years later, I come to you for another record.
That is pretty amazing to me. And I'm humbled to be the go-to person when you have music that you want to put out. I mean, you put out music without me. I'm just saying, you felt that this was special. And when you came to me, I was just like, it was a one listen for me. I was just like, oh my God, this is great. And of course, I mean, what happened? You sent it to Chuck Tillout. Chuck Tillout, tell the story of how this song blew up on its own.
So basically what happened was I was finishing up the album here, Making of Johnollie. And as I was listening to it, I was saying to myself, there's something missing. There's something missing here. The story, basically the story, when I went into the process of doing this album, it was like, I want to do this album dedicated to my dad. I want to tell this story chronically of these songs of people that help make Johnollie. So that's what the whole thing was about. As I was listening to the album, I was like, it's something missing. It was something missing. And I got this track that I had got from a friend, DJ Payne 1, and immediately when I heard it, I was like, this is exactly what it is. I don't know what I'm gonna say to this. And then I swear, as soon as I finished saying, I don't know what I'm gonna say to this, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I was like, the person who's missing from the making of Johnollie is LL Cool J. And when I said that, I immediately wrote the song in 30 minutes because I knew what I was going to say. I knew what I wanted to say about him. I knew how all of those years he inspired me and this and that. So it was very easy. I also needed it to have a vibe. People, I couldn't do it over a track that was done today, like a Drake track or a Future track. It had to have the scratching. It had to have that kind of feel to get my point across. And and that's how it happened. And then after doing it and hearing it, I was like, yo, this is kind of cool. And like I always do with my music, I sent it to Chuck Chill Out.
Okay.
I sent the song to Chuck Chill Out, and Chuck got it. And I swear the next day, Chuck called me on the phone. He was like, yo, this record is dope. This is dope. Yo, I'm gonna send this to LL right now. And I was like, all right, what? Okay, all right. The next day, I'm getting on the plane from Oklahoma to Atlanta, and my phone rings, and it's a blocked number. And I'm like, I'm usually not going to answer it, so I did.
Right. The insurance people were calling you to tell you
right.
need more insurance
about my car insurance, right? So I let it go to voicemail, and then I get a text. Yo, it's Chuck. Pick up your phone when I call. So he calls me back, and he's like, I got LL on the phone, blah blah blah. And I'm sitting on the plane, getting ready on the tarmac, getting ready to take off to go to Atlanta. And I'm like, oh, snap. Okay. So I got to take the call, but I got to be quiet about it because I don't want them to come over and be like, yo, you got to hang up your phone or whatever. Right. So I get on the phone, and Cool J is like, yo, man, I'm very inspired by the song. It was touching. You know, I got tears in my eyes right now. You all make me tear up, blah, blah, blah. I'm sitting there and I'm hearing him, but I'm sitting there thinking, oh snap, I'm on the phone with LL Cool J right now. That's all I kept thinking. It's like, I'm hearing him and it's like the Charlie Brown teacher voice, wah, 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 wah. But I'm like, yo, I'm on the phone with LL. He heard my song. Chuck did what he said he was going to do. And then L says, I'm going to put it in rotation on Rock the Bells starting next week. The following week comes, my phone starts getting these text messages of screenshots of my name on their car stereos, Johnollie the Gecko Brothers classic. And LL kept his word, and he started playing the song on the radio, and I owe that all to Chuck Chill Out.
That's the best story ever. I know that you were just blown away, sitting on an airplane with James Todd Smith in your ear.
Really wanting to pick his brain, but I know I gotta hang up because I'm on this plane. And I'm like, yo, I wanted to tell him, yo, you know, I act, I do this, I do that. Can I get on NCIS? Like all that. I wanted to do all that, but I had to take my listen, and then I had to keep it moving.
Well, you know what? There was supposed to be another guest on the show today, Rocco Bucano, who's the executive director of the Universal Hip Hop Museum. And I don't know if you know, but LL is actually one of the founding members of the museum. And obviously you've already met him through Chuck, whatever, on the phone. But it feels to me like, there's a more formal introduction and opportunity to have some more conversations there. So let's try to make that happen for you.
Oh, I'm about to say, you're not about to do one of the Maury things. And LL's on the line right now.
Guess who we have joining the show?
Joining the show right now. Cool J.
Yeah, no, we haven't gotten that savvy yet. But you know what? I might try that on somebody sometime. So Rocky couldn't join us today because they're very aggressively building out the Universal Hip Hop Museum there in the Bronx, right across the highway from Bronx Terminal Market.
Bronx Market, yeah.
And have you been yet?
I've not been to what they have. I haven't been in New York. No.
Yeah, they have this. I think it's called the Revolution of Hip Hop, the Re-Evolution of Hip Hop, and so it's a smaller exhibit, but it's meant to kind of give you a taste of what the real museum is going to be like. And I was there when it was an empty shell of a room. Okay. And they've come a long way. I can't wait. When I go to New York, I'm absolutely putting it on my itinerary. I'm really excited about it. And Rocky actually promised to put your song Classic on their reel. So I got to find out whether that actually came to pass. But he dug it too. So
the song or the video?
The song.
Okay, I got you.
The song.
That plays. Okay. Man, I'm humbled. I'm humbled.
But you
Yes,
know
it
what?
is.
Let me tell you something. That video is a love letter to New York. It is a love letter to New York. And you know, I jumped up and down when you did the video in front of Moody's Records in the Bronx.
You know, okay,
That's
so
a
you know Moody.
classic record store.
You see what I did there, right?
Yeah, I did.
You see what I did there. You know, I went in there and I asked the guy, would I be able to shoot? This guy gave me so many stories. He's like, what are you shooting about? I said, I'm shooting a song as a tribute to LL Cool J. He was like, let me tell you something. Back in like 1980 something, LL Cool J came in here and he brought this song, but right. I didn't know who he was. And he was like, LL was saying, I'm going to be famous. I got this record out. It's called I Need a Beat, blah, 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 blah. He gave me a whole rundown about him meeting LL back in the 80s.
That's wild.
Yep.
Oh, that's so wild. You know, and you think about it and you're like, wow, I'm standing right in this store where he started his career.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that's
man.
pretty. There's so much serendipity, you know. So I know the Moody family. So I called them and I was just like, I sent them the video and they wrote me back. They're like, oh, this is great. We love it. And I was just like, well, maybe you can do something, tell the world about it. It was cool.
Dope,
I was like,
dope.
yeah, there's something very special about this record. It has not seen the end yet. Because the record, although it fits within the context of your album about your coming of age and your whole life story, it stands alone in a very special way. And I totally understand why LL was moved by it. It's the producer, the chords are those really melancholy chords, and they invoke nostalgia and stuff like that, make you, oh, I remember back in the day and stuff. Let me tell you something. I didn't grow up in New York City. I grew up outside of New York City in Westchester County, but I came of age in New York City. The summer of 1980, I was working for the city of New York, and they had us going out to different job sites in all across the different 5 boroughs. So I would see this was summer 1980. So they were starting to have like parties in the parks and stuff like that. So they would be like, they'd be setting up around sunset. So it'd be like the end of my day. And they were like, are you coming to the party? And I'd be like, oh, well, when is it? And they're like, oh, come back around 7. I said, okay, or 8. And I'd be like, okay, cool. So on the weekends, I would go to these parties on the basketball court, in the parks, in Brooklyn and in the Bronx. And on Monday morning, I would go to work at my job at the city office, and they'd be like, "Oh, so what did you do this weekend?" I said, "Oh, I went to this party out in the Bronx," and the middle class girls would be sitting there clutching their pearls about, "Oh, you like that kind of music?" I was like, yeah, you don't? And they were like, no. And then it became this whole R&B versus hip hop thing. And it was the summer of 1980. Yes, Rapper's Delight was out and stuff like that. And yeah, I liked my house music too, but there was something about the energy of hip hop in that era that I was just like, I fell in love with it.
Let me just say this. Before the Sugar Hill Gang,
right,
a lot of us were seeing hip hop that wasn't on record. So I was going to places that I shouldn't have been at my age. Seeing the Cold Crush Brothers, seeing the at the time the Force MCs,
right.
Seeing at the time the Treacherous 3, and Spoonie G. So before the explosion of that, there was just the parties, like you said, it was just parties, and these guys was on the microphone. And I got to see that firsthand. And I think I could almost say, like most inner city kids at that time, it was like, wow, what is this? I want to do that. And before Cool J, it was my biggest idol, which is ironic, and I mentioned this in the song, is Kool Moe Dee.
Yeah.
Mo D was from my neighborhood. Not my neighborhood, but he was from Harlem.
Right.
And he was from Harlem. And the word around Harlem at that time was, this dude Mo D is the ish. Right. So when he started coming out with records, I was like, yo, Mo is my favorite. He's my favorite.
Right.
So it killed me. It killed me later years on when the two of them were going at it.
Right.
But yeah, man, it was the energy of it. It was the dressing, the style, the whole look, the swagger. That wasn't a word back then, but the swagger that they had.
Right.
All of that was what drew me to hip hop. And then when the MC came on the scene, and then it was really over. I was like, now I really want to do that.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, you know, it was funny, by 90s, it started to coalesce, and people those people who were following it kind of got a sense of what it was, you know?
Right.
The thing that I would say that was a kind of head turn for the people, particularly the people in the big buildings, the people at the big labels, is they were detached from the culture. They didn't understand things like
they still are.
Well, I mean, that's just business, but then, I mean, I nearly got fired because I was like, you know, all these rappers are calling out these brands in their songs, you know, whether, you know, going back to
Tommy Hilfiger, it was Tommy.
All of them. I mean, like
Gucci,
Adidas, Hilfiger, designer clothes, you know, just running it all down. And they didn't understand that we had moved beyond this, you know, counterculture, you know, rock and roll thing, which was like, no, you wouldn't ever want to be associated with a corporation or a brand, to, you know, defining your culture by the brands that you consume. And it was just like, I mean, we were taking the designer ethos and turning it on its ear. Dapper Dan is responsible for resurrecting Gucci.
Hands down.
Responsible for resurrecting Gucci. Let us understand this. So I was sitting there in the building. I was like, oh, let's find some companies to do some stuff with. And they were like, no, only big acts like Aerosmith and Rolling Stones do that kind of stuff. I said, no. Now, one of your label mates was this kiddie band from Philadelphia called Small Change.
Yeah,
and
I went to see them with me, and you went to the church to see them up in Harlem.
That's right. We sure did. Then, so we did like a deal with this company called Brooklyn Bottling, and they had all these colorful sodas that were in the bodegas. And right before we were beginning to put this cross promotion out, it was going to be huge. They would have been owned New York, and every like preteen and teen would have known about them. We found the New York Times ran a story about how this company's sodas had twice as much sugar and twice as much caffeine, and how the teachers were complaining that the kids were bouncing off the walls. Imagine, if you would, all the sodas were like Mountain Dew. Okay, so we had to pull the cross promotion, but it proved to me that you could partner an unknown act or the act that had a little bit of buzz with a brand, because as Russell Simmons says, they bring the cash and we bring the cool. So, you know, I had so much, you know, passion and thoughts about, you know, what was possible, you know, and, you know, at Mercury, everybody was, you know, all the bigwigs were running around chasing behind Vanessa and Brian McKnight and this one and that one.
Tony,
of course, which was like one of my first big acts I worked on. But I was just like, no, we have to work with these hip hop acts. The first group that I was like really kind of like, yo, we're not doing right by these hip hop acts was Ultra Magnetic MCs. I remember taking them out to a party at Boys and Girls High School in Brooklyn, and it was pretty bad. They were good, but it was pretty bad. I was just like, we spend money on the R&B artists and giving them wardrobe. How come these hip hop artists don't have wardrobe? You know, Thornhill, you're right. We need to set aside a wardrobe budget for them. So we started doing that, right? And then, you know, Black Sheep was buzzing. They had, you know, the Flavor of the Month, you know, was doing pretty well in the mix show and stuff like that. But when that video that Chuck Stone did for The Choice Is Yours hit and got on MTV, it was over. So, you know, you were there.
I was at that video
company. What was
I was
that?
at that video shoot. I was at that video shoot.
You know what? I wasn't. I don't know why. Maybe I was just stuck in the office. But when that video came out, it was like all of a sudden, it was like you were in good company. We had Black Sheep, we had Ed O.G. and the Bulldogs out of Boston. We had Diamond, Diamond and the Psychotic Neurotics, that was on Chemistry. And who else did we have?
Ultra Magnetic.
Ultra Magnetic, right? And there were other things in the pipeline. So here's a story that I will probably go in my book. So by this time, because everybody knew that I was into hip hop and I was like, following everything along, following things along and like pushing these acts and stuff like that. In fact, they made me the label manager for One Love Records, which was Black Sheep's label, right? They had the Legion.
Right. And
I
was at their video too. I was in Jingle Jangle as well.
That's a great video. Good Lord, I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about, John?
You was talking about you being a president of One Love.
Yeah.
Or working with One Love.
Yeah. But like so shoot, I really don't remember what I was saying. It was
my bad.
Oh man, it's okay. It's okay. But the short version is, being like all into into hip hop, most people didn't know that was my thing. People, just assumed, that was like, I don't know, that I was going to, I was in love with all different kinds of music, but now I remember what I was trying to say. There was one hip hop group that didn't get signed to Mercury. And I remember the A&R guy came to me because he said, I see you doing your thing. I know you would understand this group. And, they're from Philadelphia and, they're a band. And, I think you would really know what to do with this. And I was like, okay. So he let me hear the demo and I was like, oh man, this is amazing. This, that. And I wrote a little marketing plan, whatever. I brought it into the president of the company. And they ended up passing on this group. You know who they are? Of course
I know who they are. When you say a band from Philadelphia, is the Roots.
It's the Roots, yes. Mercury passed on the Roots. And I was just like, that was a franchise play. Didn't even know it. I'm like, and I actually said to him, I was like, dude, I don't understand.
Yeah, man. Listen, man, it's again, and this is no shot at any of the executives, but they, if you're not connected to that world, you don't know. You just don't know. And it's their business to deal with business,
right?
And some things just don't make business sense to them,
right?
Yeah, that's a dropping the ball. Or that.
Well, the interesting thing about that, you just said something. The thing about hip hop at that time was it was cheap. And, it was a guy and a mic and a track and maybe a DJ. And if your record was blowing up, maybe you add some dancers in there. Right. So it was cheap. And something like the Roots was like all these guys and their instruments and on and on. So it changed the dynamic, the economics of promotion and marketing.
See, I would have thought that would have been more appealing to them because they were a band. And then you have a group like, unless they felt like, well, we got Tony, and they're a band, and I don't know, but see, but I'm different.
Well, let me tell you something. A few years later, when I was at A&M Records and I was working with Mint Condition, that was not as easy as you would think it was, because you have this band. It's like there was a bunch of different personalities. Like typically the lead singer is the star of the show, and you focus the marketing around the lead singer, and everybody just comes along for a ride. But who's the star of the Roots?
The drummer.
Questlove. exactly. So it's a little bit of a disconnect because the star of the Roots, or the most
recognizable
and recognizable and marketed at this point is Questlove, right? And then Black Thought.
Right.
So I don't know if they saw that going into it or not, but bands, they're not the easiest thing in the world. And especially since they were a Black band and it was hip hop, and the marketplace, the touring marketplace for that kind of thing was probably not as developed as it is now. You know, so it presented some challenges, but like if you saw the long game on it, I would have gone for it. And I really wanted them there.
Yeah, you look where they're at today. Man.
Yeah, so, look at that at now on TV 5 nights a week.
5 nights a week. And
winning Oscars and things.
They are the premier hip hop band to go to when you're talking about big artists like a Jay-Z or Nas who wants to go, yo, I want to do a tour with a band.
Right.
The first people they're gonna go to is the Roots.
Yep.
So yeah, man, you know, they missed the boat on that one. That one and J Bum.
I know that guy. He was that nice looking light-skinned guy who should have been
Hey, speaking of which, and you're talking about brands. So Busted, as I'm talking, so here's one
there
of the
you are
we had from back then. And Bum at the time, I was like, yo, we should get a deal with Bum Entertainment or Bum Equipment.
Bum Equipment.
Because just because it just made sense. That was my name.
Right.
And yeah, man, but this is one of the promo pictures from that day, from that time.
I cannot believe that you have that on your phone. That is so dope. Please send that to me.
And there's him and I with the album cover.
There's the single cover, the 12-inch. That's what's
12-inch,
up.
Yep.
Who's in that picture with you?
That's my boy KB, but can you see who's in the background? You see what pictures in the background?
Yes, I do. There you go, Black Sheep.
Yep.
Well, you were if anybody didn't know it, you can tell them you were there.
No, I was definitely there. I am officially, you know, I'm not as known, but I'm definitely part of the hip hop legacy.
Well, you know, the beautiful thing about it is you were there, and there's pictures to prove it, and there's music to prove it, and you went on from there. But like, I remember we all used to go to the Funk Hut with Toy Soldier and Toy Soldier. Toy Soldier is known as Grandma Funk.
That's where this picture's from. That's where this is from.
That's where it came. Oh, that's amazing. Okay, so we all were there in the beginning. And, you know, I was telling somebody the other day, I remember standing there when JD brought Escape in for the first time. And I mean, they were okay. I mean, you know, they were good. You knew that they were going to be something, but just standing there 5 feet from Jermaine Dupri, like it was nothing, you know.
It was no pun intended.
And the Tribe Called Quest would come in all the time. And then the boys, Paz Nudas and them would come in from Long Island, and EPMD was there. It was like everybody was at the Funk Hut.
Jodeci was there. I seen Christopher Williams and Halle Berry in there when they were dating at the Funk Hut. This was around Strictly Business time when she made it. I was like, yo, Halle Berry is in the Funk Hut. Yeah. Halle
Berry.
Yeah. Like everybody used to come to the Funk Hut. And after that, it was Essos.
Yes, that's right. But you know, the early 90s in New York were pretty amazing. Obviously, you know, it was the beginning of the next era of hip hop. I actually believe that it really, I mean, when Native Tongues kind of ganked the whole thing, it was a shift. It was a shift in the music, but it wasn't a shift in the energy. And it wasn't until a little bit later, maybe about 5 years later, that then the West Coast rose up, and then it then became the whole East Coast, West Coast battle stuff. And by that point, I was in LA. So I was torn. I was in LA, I was torn. And then you eventually moved to LA too. When did you move to LA?
Because of who? Because of who? Why did I move to LA? Who
That has something to do with this guy.
90, I think it was like 90, I want to say around 97, 98, I came out there to visit you.
Yes.
I think I came out twice. I believe it was twice, but I remember 98, and I remember you had an Escalade or something to that effect, some kind of like a big truck. And I remember you had to go to work, and you were like, yo, you can take the truck. And I remember riding down Sunset Boulevard in your truck playing Ice Cube's We Be Clubbing. And I just felt like, yo, this is where I belong. This is where I belong. And 2 years later, I moved out in 2000. I moved out. I moved out. I stayed on your couch for 3 weeks.
Yep.
3 weeks I stayed at your house. And then me and my boy James found an apartment, and I was there for 19 years.
And you were there for 19 years. I remember I was asking you, so where are you living? Oh, same spot. You're the only person I know who ever stayed in the same place. I'm using myself as an example. I think I've moved every 4 years.
I am a creature of habit. I'm very rooted in where I go.
Yeah.
With the exception of here, I got to get out of here. But
well, when it's time to go, it's time to go,
Yes, for sure.
That's pretty amazing. But classic hip hop is always going to be the foundation. And so, you can have all these offshoots, and you mentioned hip house before, and there's this guy in New York named Sadir, and he sent me this record one day, and I laughed and I said, "Oh, it's hip house," and he said, "What's that?"
Hilarious.
I'm like, hip hop and house. I said, just. And I sent him some links to some songs, and he goes, "Oh wow, okay." And I was like, I said, 30. I said, okay. Right, exactly. So I said, no, the Jungle Brothers, go listen.
Man, listen. For a minute, that subdivision of hip hop was extremely large. It was, yes, and that's what I think Eddie, Bruce Carbone saw. He was like, right, yo, you can do this. We don't have this at Mercury. We right. have a Black Sheep. We have an LOG, but we don't have this. And maybe if I would have listened to him, I could have been there longer. Who knows? But I just wasn't. Like I said, it was two in a room, two without a hat. KY, yeah. The Jungle Brothers had a song. It was right. a bunch of and to be honest with you, Thornell, I was Eddie O'Royal, who was the producer of the song, had me get a lot of shows doing that house version of the song because he was a DJ in the club at the time.
Right. I remember.
And he had his ear to what was popping. And he was like, yo, Jay, I'm telling you, you can get more shows doing this hip house than you will do getting hip hop. A lot of acts are not getting booked, and you got to be on it. It gave me all kind of the spiel, and I just wouldn't listen. I just was hard-headed. And I did a couple of shows. I did a few shows that garnished a little bit of money at the time. And they was loving the house track. And because the producer of the track was the DJ. Latino, was the Latino, and he knew that hip house sound. Right, he was getting me booked in a lot of places.
I think I saw you a couple times perform the house version, and but by the time I got there, it was already out. So I was just like, and I was introduced to you through the hip hop version, and then I heard the hip house version, and so to me, I was like, candidly, I was just learning, but it holds a place in my heart because, remember even shoot, Latifah came out with Coming to My House.
Come. Yep.
Give me
body.
body.
Yes, give me body. Yes. It was, listen, it was, so it's funny when I hear people clowning Drake for his last album, or talking about Beyonce about her last album, because we were doing that in the 90s.
Right.
Like Drake could have dropped that album in the 90s and people would have been like, oh, this is dope.
Right.
But the times have changed. And people just be hating on Drake. So no matter what he do, he's gonna have some kind of haters.
Well, when you're that big, you got to expect the haters. I actually liked the record. It took me, real talk, I'd heard the bad press before I listened to it. And when I listened to it, I said, you know what? To me, it felt uneven, but I still liked it.
Okay.
Yeah, I still liked it.
I think, and this is funny for me to say, I am a big Drake fan. Let me just first say that. But when I heard it, and I still haven't really got into it, there's some songs that I did like, but it sounded like it was so it felt like it was one long track. On the flip side to that, I'm not a fan of Miss Knowles, but I like her album better.
Oh, I like it better too. I like it better too. It's better conceived, and it feels like a body of work rather than, like you said, one long track.
Yes. Yeah.
The differences between what's going on Drake's record is how do you say this? It's not enough diversity. It's not enough sonic diversity. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And while Beyonce's album is ear candy.
Yes. And even the fact that, like when I heard her do the Donna Summer, it's like the Donna Summers sample tracking it. I'm like, oh, okay. That's familiar to us. That's
ear candy. It's ear candy. It's very melodic, but you know how sticky it get.
Yes, of course.
We are so glad that you are here, and I'm just going to take this on the outro just to say thank you for joining us here on Impact Music, Media, and Culture. There you are.
With LL.
With LL. Oh my goodness.
I got on my Kango.
Yes, sir. Oh my goodness. Indeed. This is really something else. But you have Classic JTS submitted Best Rap Performance for Grammy consideration this year. And
correct.
Best of luck. We're going to make sure that everybody knows.
I'm claiming it, man. I'm Grammy nominated for a Classic JTS. I'm nominated for it.
Okay, you claim that. We're going to stand in that, and they're going to be like, "Oh, tribute to LL Cool J, of course." Yeah, but the classic flow is timeless, and the song is so dope. And for those of us who were there, I mean, I was older than he was, but I remember when he first came out with I Need a Beat, and then radio, I was just like, this teenager, this teenager is killing it. And just to watch his career grow, it's very heartfelt. Your song just nails it. So I'm really,
I appreciate it, man.
Best of luck. It was a one listen for me, as I said in the beginning.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you.
We wish you
me, sir.
Best of luck, and we'll do this again. We promise we'll do this again. Next record. Where can people see you? Tell people where they can follow you, where they can see you, all that stuff.
Okay. So I'm pretty much easy to find on all social media. If you type in my name, Johnollie, which is spelled JOHNOLLIE, just like that, JOHN, all one word, like you see right there. Whoever's watching on the screen, is right there, but it's all one word. I'm on the road it seems like every other week with Cameo. So if you love Cameo, if you are a funk fan, and Cameo is coming to your town, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to be there on stage with Cameo. So look for Cameo dates. I will be there. And then, like you mentioned earlier, I have a group called the Gecko Brothers, and we are putting together a new album. Our album is done, but we're putting together some kind of small kind of tour that we're trying to do. So all my social media is Johnollie, JOHNOLLIE, and you can find me. That is Google me.
There you go. Just Google me, bitch.
That's Google me. It is. I'm everywhere, man.
Anyway, so with that note, we're signing off. But we really appreciate you joining us on Impact, Music,
Thank you.
Media, and Culture. And you definitely brought the culture. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Thornell. I appreciate y'all. And thank you to Allison and whoever the pretty lady is with the picture down in the other corner.
That's Betsy.
Yeah.
Peace.